Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Blazer Nation Live. My name is Ryan Hogan. I am the Director of Admissions, and I'm thrilled to be here today with my colleague, Dr. Jamie Landau. Jamie, introduce yourself to our audience.
Hello, Ryan. Yes, I'm Dr. Jamie Landau, Director of the Center for Excellence in Learning and Teaching at VSU, also an Associate Professor of Communication, and perhaps my best title, co-host with Ryan Hogan of Blazer Nation Live, and this is our third episode.
Yes, this is a really exciting one for me, Jamie. I don't know if I ever told you, but my first experience at Valdosta State, and especially in the classroom in the academic setting, was when I was 7 years old. Did I ever tell you that?
No, cute little Ryan.
I know. Well, and I know what you're thinking, Jamie, is because I was a child prodigy and, just extremely bright. But that was not the case. I hate to disappoint you. But my mom was actually an adult learner who came back to Valdosta State College at the time to finish her degree after she had my sister and I. And so we spent many nights in Odom Library or in West Hall. Mom would set us up with coloring books in the back of the room while she was in classes. And so that was always my experience with college. And it's just kind of wild to think, many years later, earning 2 bachelor's degrees from here and working in the admissions office for 17 years. But that's how my journey started off. So, I always love welcoming students to Valdosta State, but it's always just a little bit of a passion when I see adult learners coming back. So I'm really excited to talk about this with you and some of our guests today.
Yeah. And that is the theme of our topic today, which is adult learners and online education. So today we're going to have 2 students, 2 adult learners, as well as 2 faculty who teach online, and one in which who's specifically an expert in adult and online education. So very excited for our guests today to bring a lot to our conversation.
It's going to be a busy show. We've got a lot to talk about just because there's so many things that come with, learning and teaching. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started and welcome our first guest all the way from Paris. We have Trish Travieso with us. Hi, Trish. How are you?
Hi, Ryan. I'm well, thanks. How are you?
Very well, very well. Tell our audience just a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am an adult learner. I'm 43 years old, and after 21 years in international media, I decided to follow my dream, which is psychology. So I'm at Valdosta as an online learner now.
And y'all had a unique interaction, right, that brought her to VSU. Am I correct, Ryan and Trish?
Yeah, Trish. Yes. We can talk a little bit more about that later. But yeah, we met. It was funny during the pandemic when she was returning to school, and so we can definitely go into that a little bit more. Let's go ahead and bring in our next guest too, Jamie.
Oh, okay. So Dr. Bailey, Mandy Bates Bailey. She's a professor of political science and teaches a lot of online education courses. And so she got to teach Trish in a class. So Dr. Bailey, if you could tell us a little bit about that course, and then what a kind of a rewarding experience it was to have an adult learner like Trish in your class.
Absolutely. I taught Trish in an introductory level political science class, part of the core program. So everyone is required to take it. It was an absolute pleasure to teach Trish. She stood out in terms of her writing, her ability to manage the class effectively. And I don't often get that in summer classes. And it was an absolute pleasure.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. And now I want to kind of dig in a little more to Trish's experience as an adult learner in online education. And then Dr. Bailey, I'll come back with some more questions for you. So Trish, we're really excited to feature you and your professor on the show. So can you tell us a little more actually about your career and how you ended up applying to VSU? So I guess I hinted at that a little bit earlier.
Right. So I've been working in international media for, like I said, about 21 years now, and I love it, and it's one of my passions. I decided to recently follow my dream, which is psychology, and I came upon Valdosta and decided upon Valdosta because there was such a personal touch to the staff there, and it already started in the admissions process. So Valdosta was the only school, and I had a long list of schools that I was looking at, a very long list, where actually Ryan was offering to do an online sort of a video call just to answer my questions about the university. And that sort of personal touch really was I think the click that just made me decide on Valdosta, among other great options as well, obviously. So that personal touch was really wonderful.
That's great. And probably with you being in a totally other country and not even living in Georgia, to have that connection, right, to our virtual campus really meant a lot when you were searching for the program.
Absolutely. That was a big, big part of it, to have that humanness as well.
Great. And then can you share a little bit more now about your career that kind of you had been working in? You mentioned you had worked in kind of international media. We'd love to hear a little bit about that, because adult learners bring so much of their background and their career to the classroom.
Yes, yes. Well, so I was working for Elle magazine and in international brand management. So working with the editors-in-chief to help them sort of make their magazine look as strong and beautiful as possible in line with the brand DNA. So it's interesting because there's a lot of, psychology in some ways, because you're dealing with, people who have, the magazines that they produce, there's a lot of personal element to it that they really put everything into it. So working with them to try to find the perfect balance to make the brand totally on brand and what it's supposed to be in all these different countries around the world that have so many different cultures and customs. So that was fascinating, and then I think it will bring me, I hope, a lot of experience and a lot of richness to my work as an adult learner, to my studies, and in the future in the profession. So it's really been a great part.
Can I ask a quick question? So the covers that we're seeing, these are actual magazines that you worked on in all these different countries. Is that correct?
Yeah, so these are all the different covers, well, not all, but many different covers of Elle editions, and there's about 45 editions of Elle around the world, all locally edited. And so I would work with the editors-in-chief and help a lot of these editions choose the cover, the most appropriate cover for their magazine for that month. We would launch magazines, and I would work with the editorial team putting together the magazines. So so these are kind of like a little snippet of the magazines. This one, for example, is Elle Korea, which looks very different from, let's say, Elle US or some of the other different L's around the world. So they're all very unique.
Wonderful. Thank you. Now I hope you don't mind. I'm going to follow up with like a little more question about the learning process of now you being in some of these online classes here at VSU. So in the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning, which is a field of research that studies teaching, it says self-directed learning, kind of when a student has self-motivation, takes the initiative, knows their learning needs and goals, and tries to achieve them, that this is key to academic success in online courses. And interestingly, the research also reveals that adult learners are self-directed learners. So I was curious, does this describe you, this notion of self-directed learning? And if so, can you give an example of maybe how you've been a self-directed learner in your online classes here at VSU?
Sure. Yeah. So it definitely has been a great contributor to how I am as an adult learner. Working in the professional field for 20 plus years, I've learned so much just about getting the job done, about when you don't understand something, you have to dig deeper and to really understand it. So that sort of process professionally has seeped into naturally into how I am as an adult learner, where I want to uncover everything. I want to understand it and grasp it so that eventually if I need to, explain it to someone, I could. That's the learning level that I want to get at. And so professionally, that has sort of helped me get there. An example, I think sort of there might be several examples, but just, in the discussion posts. So during, a class, you have the discussion posts to talk about, let's say, certain assignments or certain topical themes related to the course. And so there you're interacting with other students. And the interactions are fascinating and really eye-opening a lot of the time about, the different perspectives that people are bringing into a particular theme. So that sort of, kind of everyone helping each other in some ways. And I enjoy being with, a range of different aged people, because online you don't really see the ages. You just see the profile, the person, the photo in front of you, and you're working on the work, the subject matter together.
I like actually what you just gave an example of, because not only was it sort of self-directed, but then peer-directed, that you were able to even direct peers in their learning process, which is really neat, even to kind of play with the word self-directed, almost peer-directed learning.
Right.
So that's really great. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
It's
Ryan,
exciting.
I think you're muted. Yeah, because Ryan's going to jump in and ask now a question.
We do that at least once an episode. But no, Jamie, I was going to share even my experience being a student here at Valdosta State. I remember that we were put in group projects, and there was someone like Trish. She had actually 20 years working in a bank, and got put into our group with a project. And some of what you were talking about, she brought so much value to what we were working on. And she was even kind of helping us, like, hey, let me help y'all with these different concepts. So I feel like, and that's why I'm so glad we're highlighting adult learners, is the value they bring to a classroom, which is a good segue to my next question for Dr. Bailey. Dr. Bailey, can you share your experience with Trish in your classroom, and how it might have changed the dynamic of your course for yourself or even the other students?
Absolutely. And I can address that in a couple of different ways. And this is a perfect point, a perfect bridge to address that, because I would certainly say Trish was directing her peers in class. Trish took note of the specificity she pulled out of the direction. She had a grasp of how the class was going to proceed, and she picked up on that quickly in a way that I don't often see from other students. In fact, Trish mentioned discussion. I had a student ask for more clarity in a discussion post, and Trish was quick at one point to put him out where to find that I had actually provided greater clarity in a lecture, and sent the student back to the material for me actually before I got in to respond to the post. Which is, I think, one of the great aspects of asynchronous learning, is giving students the opportunity to get involved in that way. As for me, in the summers, I often get those students that are either trying to get an early start, or those students that are trying to hurry up and finish. And oftentimes in the summer, there is less motivation to really enjoy the content, to process the content. It was incredibly refreshing on my end to see a student that wanted to know more, to see a student that paid attention to things like, here's information about your professor, that Trish actually read that. Rarely happens, and comes back to me asking about my own research. And as Ryan and I have discussed, is sort of a bit of happy chance that Trish wound up in my class as someone who's interested in psychology, because my work is interdisciplinary and bridges psychology and political science. And so it was a really good marriage to that end. It was just phenomenal experience. And a lot of it was simply because Trish brought the tools into class to manage the time, which isn't easy to do as, a woman that has a career, a husband, and 2 small children. And so, and as a mother myself, I'm impressed with her ability to do that.
And so I think what you're also saying is she kind of upped your game too as a professor, right? She kind of
absolutely,
yeah. That's great.
Absolutely. And that was refreshing. That was refreshing for me. Now's the time for me to bring in some new examples that maybe I hadn't been using in the class. And actually, I think that one of the things that students forget oftentimes is that professors aren't just teachers, right? And we're active in research. And by Trish paying attention to those things, I was able to introduce my research into an introductory class in ways that I haven't in the past.
That's
And
really
I
great.
think that was a very positive sort of thing for both me and the class. Hopefully Trish as well, but the class as a whole.
Definitely.
Great.
We're all bragging on Trish for a second, but I want to
I'm
just.
blushing.
I know, Trish. But it was I really and Mandy and I've worked together on different things, and it was one of the first times I got an email from a faculty member that said, "Thank you for bringing this student to our campus." I mean,
Wow.
that was really, it touched me, just because I mean, you could tell how much you had an impact on her class, and and so it's a good happy family here at Valdosta State, and so that was one of the few times that it happened.
That's incredible. That's incredible.
So quick question for you, Trish, because this is something you and I talked about a lot when you were coming in, because 20 years coming in with such a illustrious career that you've had. We offer something at Valdosta State called prior learning assessment. So that was one of the first things I kind of talked about with you, about where we offer college credit for some of the experience that you've had in your work. And so can you explain how those opportunities have been helpful for you overcoming some of the barriers?
Oh, definitely. I mean, it is such a barrier beginning to think about going back to school mid-career, because it's quite, it's quite a big decision to make. And in that decision, there are many factors, including, will I be able to transfer over credits from several years ago? Will I be able to also get, as you're talking about the prior learning assessments, will I be able to get recognition of the work that I've done professionally? So, for example, I do a lot of writing, and that was one of the prior learning assessments that I was able to transfer over. That you had told me about, Ryan, and that was absolutely fantastic to be able to also get recognition for my writing, for example, that kind of ticked off the box of being able to or not needing to take another English course, and so that not only helped my the credits that I still had to take for my major, but it also felt very good, the recognition for that.
Yeah, I think it's really important just because, because we have this conversation a lot with our adult learners coming back, is they don't expect to get, credit for their experiences. And we see this often with, someone who, my example of the person in my classroom, 20 years working in a bank, I think we as an institution went, does she really need to take introduction to accounting, if there's 20 years of that? And so I just want to educate our audience, or anyone thinking about that is a possibility. It's some work, we had to put together portfolios of all of Trish's work, but it was easy to kind of go into that. Jamie, did you have a follow-up with that?
Yeah, and I just wanted to share that the ability for adult learners to apply to real-world setting, to apply their career work in real-world settings, also occurs in the classroom. So not just through credit, and that's great, because that prevents the barriers of admission. But then to enhance their learning process in the classroom, they're able to apply those career to their assignments and things like that. And like even Dr. Bailey mentioned, in discussion posts and things like that. So I just wanted to emphasize that it occurs both in the application process, but also then in the classroom to kind of grow students and as they continue in their career here at VSU.
Yep. Jamie, I think that's a great segue to our next guest. So I do want to pause here for a second and let our audience know that we've got some questions that we want to ask our guests. However, if you have any questions for any of us, in the chat feature or in the comments feature, you can put any questions down there. You can direct them at any one of our panelists, or if you just have the question and you're not sure who to answer it, we can figure that out between us. So drop any questions that you have in the comments. If you're watching this after the fact, after we're live, I will share my email address. And so if you want to get in touch with any of our panelists after the fact, we can cover that as well too. So just be sure to put any of those questions in the comments, because we have staff that's looking for that, and we'll bring everybody back at the end for questions. So thank you, Trish, for being with us. Thank you, Dr. Bailey. We'll bring you back at the end, and we'll bring in our next guest, Mr. Tim Hinson from the Miller Electric Company. Tim, how are you?
Hello, very good.
Good. Tim, just tell us briefly about yourself.
Well, I work for Miller Electric Company. I've worked here for 30 years, and I live in the Jacksonville, Florida area. So it's been a great opportunity for me to attend VSU remotely because I do live so far away from the school.
Excellent. We'll bring in our next guest from the faculty side, a good friend and colleague, Dr. Charles Backus. Dr. Backus, how are you?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you today, Ryan?
Very well, very well. Dr. Backus, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we've got lots of questions for you and Tim.
All right. Well, first, let me tell you, Ryan, I really enjoyed hearing your story about you sitting in the class with your mom, because as an adult educator, a professor at Valdosta State, I've quite often had children sitting in the back of my classrooms. And to be honest with you, they really added a lot, because we know adults have lives and families are an important part of them. And I will tell you, I also had to find daycare for a couple of my students for a summer program that I used to do. Thank goodness for the YMCA. I'll just leave it at that. But as I mentioned, I was at VSU for 27 years, retired from Valdosta State in 2019 as a professor of adult and career education, and now I am proud to be professor emeritus, which is kind of like retired with honors.
That's incredible. So speaking of your time as a faculty member here at Valdosta State, when you worked in adult and career education, you actually created a unique degree called Workforce Education and Development with a track in technical leadership. You and I spent, I think that's how we got to know each other so well. There was about a year's worth of phone calls and getting this to where it is. And so if you could just tell us a little bit about what that is.
Yeah, it was really interesting. It started with a hallway conversation between myself and the person who at the time was president of Miller Electric at a conference we were having up at the University of Michigan. And he mentioned to me that he had contacted Valdosta State about setting up a degree program for the apprentices, the electrical apprentices in the Jacksonville area, so they could convert their apprenticeship credits into, at the time, he was looking for an associate degree. So I worked with him. His name's David Long. I worked with David at Miller Electric, or through Miller Electric, and we created not an associate degree, but in fact, we created a bachelor's degree. And that particular bachelor's degree is in workforce education development. We worked with our representatives, including Tim at Miller Electric, determined that a track in technical leadership would be the best. And in that track, we managed to pull in 42 hours of college credits at no cost to the student, but to bring in 42 hours of credit for their apprenticeship. Now, this apprenticeship is a registered apprenticeship. It's 5 years, it's thousands of hours of on-the-job experience, along with many, many hours of classroom-related classroom experience or classroom information. So it's very substantial, and it basically takes over the content portion of this degree.
And okay.
No,
Ryan,
yeah,
go ahead.
Just real quick, and I think just to really sort of put a pin in that too is, when Charles and I would make visits to Miller Electric and host even events like this, because Miller Electric's a huge company with people all around the country, and they would beam in for presentations like this. I just saw how much relief off their shoulders, where it's like, I'm going to get credits for things that I already have experienced. And back to what we were talking about, the prior learning assessment and those sort of things was a big part of that as well too, Charles.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's part of prior learning assessment, is looking at not only the knowledge that you've acquired, but also looking at skills, at certifications, experiences, and things like that contribute to knowledge and skill acquisition.
And this is a great segue, because Ryan's very interested in the kind of admission side of it. And then I'm always interested in given my role as director of CELT, the pedagogy side of it, right? So then what actually happens after folks are admitted? So Dr. Backus, it's so great to have you here today, because I see you as both a practitioner and a scholar, having the scholarly background in this work. And so we've kind of heard Trish's story and how her story resonates about adult learners. And we're going to learn a little more about Tim in a second. Can you, from the research you've done, kind of share this difference between what's called a whole field of study on pedagogy versus andragogy, which our audience may not know those differences. So I'd love to help you define that. Can you define it for us first?
Certainly. Pedagogy is what most of us are familiar with, and pedagogy is simply the art and science of teaching children. And sometimes we apply that to the teaching of adults, but we run into some real issues, and we'll talk about those in a few minutes. Andragogy is the art and science of helping adults learn. And I think our graphic does a really good job of illustrating the difference between the two.
Yeah, and actually I would jump in and say pedagogy is not just about teaching children, because it's also the art and science of teaching college age folks, but you're right that there's a difference in sort of those demographics. So can you flesh that out a little bit more?
Sure. And unfortunately, Jamie, sometimes we treat college students as though they're children. And that's where one of the real problems comes in. So if we look at pedagogy, which is the traditional teaching method, and it's the method I used when I was a high school teacher back in Louisiana I taught for about 12 or 13 years in a high school classroom. But in a typical pedagogical setting, the learner is very, very dependent on the teacher. If you think about a typical class, the students are going to walk in, they're going to sit down, they're going to chatter among themselves, then they're going to stare at the teacher. And the teacher is often thought of kind of the sage on the stage. It's the person who has all the information. The students sit there and the teacher tells things to the student, also known as teaches things to the students. They write it in their notebooks, they study it, and they regurgitate it on an exam. With adults, it's quite different. Adults tend to be much more self-directed with their learning, and they come in with a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge. And I can use an example here. If I was teaching, let's say an electrical class, I was an industrial arts teacher, now known as technology education teacher, and I sometimes taught electrical, electricity. And generally what would happen is I would ask, how many of you know anything about electricity? And a student may say, well, my father has been an electrician for 20 years. And he's told me don't touch anything because it'll kill me. But when I work with adults, more likely what they may say is, I've been an electrician for 20 years. And at that point, I know their experiences are going to be a whole lot different than that student who at best maybe their father or even their mother was an electrician for 20 years. So they bring much less experience to the classroom. Dr. Bailey and Trish talked about that. They talked about how much experience Trish brought to the class with Dr. Bailey. They also are really used to, the younger learners are really used to being told what they're going to learn. And adult learners come in and say, hey, here's what I need to know. I'm now in this particular job, or I'm in a setting and I need to know how to do this. And at that point, they challenge their instructor to facilitate their learning and to help them determine what it is that they need to know.
And that's actually a really interesting thing, because I had another question where I want to talk more about the barriers to adult learners, and Trish hinted at this earlier, but then clearly how the barriers that they have, but then you can talk through even how maybe your work has helped them overcome it. So, because it's both a strength of an adult learner, like you said, to bring in all this career experience, but there are also some challenges. So can you share a little bit more about some of the barriers, but then how even your work with Nika Earn and even being an adult learner teacher helps adult learners overcome those barriers?
Absolutely. You know, when you think of barriers to learning, even young learners have barriers to learning, and some of the barriers are the same. We know that all kids don't live in a Norman Rockwell painting, so there can be barriers, you know, and they can even have barriers related to their learning styles and all. But with adults, they have some other unique barriers. One of the bigger barriers that they have is that they have a full set of responsibilities outside of school. They have families. They have budgets, they have jobs. A lot of them, because they're older learners, they have health problems they're dealing with. And of course, now we're living in this, different people call it different things, but kind of the sandwich generation, where adults, especially middle-aged adults, they're taking care of not only their children, they may also be taking care of their parents. So they have time issues they have to deal with. They have money issues. And a lot of times they have a lack of confidence. You know, one of the comments that I hear very, very often from my adult learners when they come into the NECA Earn program, which I'll talk about in just a minute, is, I'm going to be the oldest person in class, and I don't know a whole lot about technology the way that these kids of today do. So one of the first things you have to do is convince them that they know a lot more than they think they know, and they bring a lot of things to the classroom they didn't realize they bring. But I guess, you know, Jamie, if I had to tell you, one of the biggest barriers really is the lack of information, the lack of where to get started, and that's where NECA Earn comes in. So if you don't mind, I'm going to take just a minute and I'll talk about what NECA Earn is. But NECA Earn is a program that was established by the National Electrical Contractors Association, and it is for our membership. We generally refer to them as our stakeholders. But these are people who are electricians. They're people who work for the companies like Tim. Tim is actually the, unless his title has changed, he's the director of training for Miller Electric. And we created the NECA Earn program so people like Tim could contact me. And what I've done is I've put together a network of colleges and universities, of which Valdosta State is one of our proud partners. But we have right now 8 partner institutions, and they range all the way from big flagship schools to small private schools, regional universities, and everything in between. We have vetted over 120 different degree and certificate programs that range for everything from business administration degrees that would be appropriate for the CEO of the company, through human resources, training programs, all the way to programs that are appropriate for journey workers and apprentices. So then when the NECA stakeholders contact me, I'll interview them much like an academic advisor does. I'll help them make some decisions on which programs may be best for them, and then I'll connect them with the college or the university, such as, once again, Valdosta State University. In Tim's case, he was interested in Valdosta State University. We could connect him directly with Ryan and his team, and with very little problems, very little, I won't say effort, because everything that's worth doing takes effort, but we removed a lot of the barriers to where Tim could get to the right people at the right time.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Backus. And, you know, it's interesting too that you were talking about kind of confidence of adult learners, you know, even Ryan was sharing his mom as a working mom coming back, you know, so mothers coming back and thinking, can they manage, right? Can they manage their life? Can they go back to school at the same time? And so I guess that segues a little bit in, and I love that your NECA Earn program kind of helps them have a smoother process of and feeling empowered to apply back to school. But another question I have is about, again, the teaching. So again, when they're in the classroom, could you give advice to faculty at VSU, other faculty who teach adult learners? What would be one teaching tip then to kind of really empower and address our adult learner needs?
Sure, and I don't even have to think about that one. And much of it is what I just talked about, and it's respect your learner. Respect the experiences of your learner. They're not walking in as a blank slate. They're not walking in just to hear what you have to say. They're walking in to apply what you have. They're walking in with their own experiences. You know, the benchmark is set very high. You know, and one other thing, Jamie, with adult learners, and it relates very carefully or very much to this, is things have to be applicable to their real lives, whether it's their family, whether it's the job they have, or if it's the job or position that they're seeking, which may be the main reason why they're coming back to school.
Yeah, you and I, when we were talking about preparing for this this Blazer Nation Live today, you and I were talking a lot about the pedagogy or the andragogy of case-based projects and experiential learning. And VSU is launching a lot of new initiatives in experiential learning, and I see that dovetailing perfectly with addressing adult learning and our new online programs as well. So that seems like exactly kind of the research and the work you're doing at Nika Earn. So thank you for that. Ryan, you're muted again.
One of these days, Jamie, but thank you. But I think this is a good segue to even bring some of what you both are talking about to Tim. So Tim, if you could tell us a little bit about what you've been able to apply to your learning back at your current position at Miller Electric and future goals.
Yeah, sure. Well, as Dr. Backus said, my title here is Director of Training. So we have 2,200 employees, and we worked in 49 states last year. So we're spread out all over, but we have a lot of needs for teaching our employees various topics. Some of it's regulatory, safety, but we do leadership and other things. So the degree that I'm taking, which is the workforce education and technical leadership, falls right into what I do as for a living. So it's allowed me to apply the principles that I've learned, and it's made me realize that some of the things that we were doing weren't the best things to be doing, because adult learners have different learning styles and all that. So it's been a welcome relief for me, because it has given me more confidence to be able to approach our learning here at Miller in a way that I think is backed up by, my college learning and the best practices that are out there.
I think that's interesting. And I tell you what, ever since Dr. Backus introduced us to Miller Electric, I've been such a big fan, mainly just of how much you value as a company your employees. I mean, from the time I walked into that beautiful facility down in Jacksonville, there was a palpable feeling where you felt like the employees loved working there because they felt like they were valued. So can you tell us a little bit about what Miller Electric's actually doing for their employees who come to Valdosta State?
Sure. Well, first, we do have a 4-person learning team here that works full-time in providing educational opportunities and personal growth opportunities for our employees. And so we built a culture of that. But on top of that, as far as with Valdosta State, we have a tuition reimbursement program for our employees. And what that involves is any employee, full-time employee who's been here 1 year can access the tuition reimbursement. And so the company will pay up to 100% of the tuition for Valdosta State. And it's graduated based on the grade that you get. But if you get an A, you get 100% of your tuition paid for, and even 75% of the book cost. So that's a huge investment that Miller has made to our employees. So when you combine the prior learning credits that I received for apprenticeship and apply that, and then I have the tuition reimbursement, it just makes it so, it's not even a question of should I. It's I couldn't wait to get into this because it makes it so appealing for our employees.
That's great. I want to just jump in one thing. What I love to hear about this too, Tim, is y'all are kind of embodying professional development, right? Lifelong learning. That's even what I do here in the Center for Teaching and Learning and Excellence for Faculty is kind of faculty also, how do they continue to be lifelong learners? How do we make our students be lifelong learners? So this all is like full circle with adult online education, with faculty teaching excellence, and our and students like you and Trish. So
yeah,
it's really neat.
It's a great thing. And I came up through the apprenticeship, so I had a lot of technical training how to be an electrician. I'm a master electrician. But as I moved up into the office and higher level responsibilities, I did identify that I had some certain skill gaps that I didn't learn in apprenticeship. They didn't teach us that. They taught us, electricity, how to do electrical work. So that's what VSU has been able to complement my apprenticeship training to make me more well-rounded as an employee, especially as the higher level responsibilities as I move up.
I agree. So we're start getting to their questions from the audience, which we've already gotten a few. And Dr. Backus, one of your former students, is actually in the audience here. Dr. Kimberly Tanner said that she enjoyed being in your classes and says you actually walk the walk and walk the talk. So we've got some people that have asked questions, but for Jamie and I think this is really good opportunity for us to share some really exciting news on the Valdosta State front. But Tim and Trish bring a lot of diversity to Valdosta State. And as we've heard, other students and faculty exponentially benefit from having adult learners like them in the class. Services like NECA Earn break down application barriers for adult learners. Then there's VSU's personal touch with prior learning assessments, along with a reputable, budget-friendly online program set up for academic success.
And what's really neat, I guess I should have mentioned earlier, is that not only is my job as director of the Center for Excellence in Learning and Teaching, but I also oversee our Center for E-Learning. And this fall, VSU, which many folks may have heard about recently in the news, is expanding our online undergraduate programs for adult learners with the launch of a new online college for career advancement. And this will include 8 sought-after bachelor's degrees for adult learners. So these are adult learners kind of finishing up or enhancing, as Tim was saying, their professional development with a bachelor's degree. We have a number of them. Some of them include psychology, which Trish is in, business administration, organizational leadership, elementary education, computer and information systems, interdisciplinary studies. And tuition will be more affordable even than our national competitors for that. So what I think pedagogically is really exciting, those are all great things, but for me, it's bringing more and more students like Trish and Tim to our campus. Which is really, really, really great. So Ryan, I know if you now wanted to kind of open it up for more questions with our panelists.
Well, we've actually already gotten a question from the audience on that, just because in working in the admissions office, that new online college has been a lot of things that we're talking about. We're very excited, just all the things that we just talked about, Jamie, that it's going to open up a lot of more opportunities for students. We did get a question from the audience on how would that be different than some of our already online degrees. So we do already have online degrees that students are completing, and this program is a little bit different. Students in this program pay a flat fee. Some of the other fees that students would pay for services and things like that would not be part of it. Books are included within as well. And then also the courses, and I think you covered this briefly, Jamie, the courses are accelerated in 8-week terms.
Yes.
Anything you want to add to that, since you know more about the academic side of things?
Yes. Well, there are only 8 programs in this new launch at the moment. We have a lot of other programs that run a full semester, but yeah, these are going to be shorter courses that the content is still there, but they're adapted for adult learners. So, even Tim and Trish, I'm sure they could speak to this, right? That as they're managing their full-time careers, their families, right? They can't come to a noon to 2 o'clock course every day for 4 months, for 4 months, right? Much more accelerated, but also because they're self-directed, they can accelerate at that pace. So that's how they're a little bit different.
And, there's a lot of questions that come up with that. And I'm going to share my information at the end, just because I'm sure people have questions specifically, like my conversation with Trish started off like, what about the credits I've taken? How does that work? One of the things I'm very proud of at Valdosta State is we are a large school. We have 12,000 students either on campus or online, but I'm proud. And even from my time here as a 7-year-old to even now 21 years, student, staff, and all that, there's actually people that you can talk to about your specific situation. So I'm going to share my email address at the end of this. So if anybody is interested in that online college, we can talk a little bit more about that. I see some questions about prior learning assessments, things like that. All of that's our individual based stuff. So I'm going to share that. But at this time, Jamie, I think I'm going to bring all of our guests back and start opening up some questions there.
Yeah.
Make sure I got everybody. There we go.
Charles, so one conversation we were all having was, again, this kind of notion of adult learners having kind of a lot of things pulling on their time management, their workspace, their bandwidth, their psychological cognitive load. Didn't know if you wanted to talk about that a little more with Trish and Tim.
Yeah, certainly. And I really would rather them give out this information than me, because they're the ones that are having to deal with it. But so Tim, let me start with you. What is some advice that you would give to someone who is either in say an online program, or even if it's a face-to-face program that they're doing as a working adult? What's some advice you would give them as far as time management, how to make it work?
Well, I would suggest starting out with maybe one class if they haven't taken anything. I'm taking 4 currently, and I've been taking 4 in the spring and the fall semesters. But it took me a little bit of time to develop my time management skills to do that, and that is a lot. That is a load. So I would start out slow and get used to the learning management system and how the college operates, and then slowly just start building on that as you get confidence in the courses.
All right, thank you. And Trish, you're in a different time, a bunch of different time zones, and on top of that, thousands of miles away. What about you? What are some ways you've made this work?
Well, for starters, the asynchronous element is the only way that this is possible, just with balancing everything, in my daily life as, a working mom. So the asynchronous element has really, really been the key. What Tim mentioned also is starting out light, for example, with one course is a great way to do it. That's what I did. And that's really, I think, Ryan might remember this, but that was sort of the way to kind of just dip my toes and see how this was going to work, from the different time zones. I mean, I'm 6 hours ahead of you guys, and luckily it's asynchronous, because otherwise I would be up very, very late at night on some lectures. So it's been helpful.
And Jamie, if I can say something, thank y'all very much. If I can kind of take the teacher role here, though, I would like to give just a little bit of advice myself. And I think that Tim and Trish probably have managed to carve out some really good time in spite of the fact that they're working adults. But you do need to make sure that you carve out the time. No one says that it's easy. I don't think Tim or Trish will say that it's really easy. And sometimes what you have to do is you have to carve out some time, let your family know this is my school time. And I'm going to have to close up in a room occasionally. I'm going to have to be able to focus. And one caution I will give you, I've had some adult learners who tried to push it to the very end of the day, after they've worked, after they put the kids to bed, cooked supper. Now it's 11:30 p.m. I have 30 minutes to get 2 hours worth of classwork done. And honestly, I don't think that works very well. So when you come in, you do need to come in being that self-directed learner that you can be, and make sure that you carve out some quality time for yourself and some quality time to do your work.
If I can just add to that, I absolutely agree. I mean, if it's all about finding the right balance, and you cannot just expect to come home at the end of the day and start to study all night. It's just not possible. You have to also find the way to manage your time so that you do have hours where, you have the mental clarity to focus and to study.
And Trish, I'm just going to jump in there just because, our experience in getting to know each other, in which, in full honesty, I have to really be transparent. I remember when you emailed, it was about April, high time during the pandemic. I was trying to figure out how I was, like many people in the world, how am I going to do my job, from home and those sort of things. And you sent a very detailed email about all these wonderful things that you've done in your life. And I set that video chat up because I wanted to get to know you, but I was also trying to save myself from one more email that I was trying to get through. And I think, and that's the thing that we do sometimes, though, is, especially since this online college thing has happened, I've said, once the conversation needs to kind of go out of email sometimes and get to know the person. And that's something I'm proud of at Valdosta State. But one of the things that I talked about with you when we first got started, and many of our adult learners, is the barriers students face. And Tim, I'd be interested in this, and we've talked a little bit about this. If you could talk about the barriers, to you enrolling, not just, the time aspect of it, the confidence and some of those different things.
Definitely. I mean, first and foremost, just the credits from my previous university experience. Many years ago, I think I already did age myself earlier here, but anyway, quite a while ago, at different universities, 2 different universities in the States, and that was able to be accepted, which was already a big first step, which means I didn't have to add 2 more years to my plan for completing my bachelor's with Valdosta. So that was one big barrier. The PLAs, the prior learning assessments, was another big barrier that I was able to overcome thanks to your help, Ryan, and thanks to Valdosta's offers. The tuition so Valdosta entered into my budget as well, but still it was a challenge because I don't have, let's say, student loan and all the things that I had when I was younger and just starting out. So it's me who was paying for my education, and the fact that there were scholarships available, I had no idea. I really started out thinking that, scholarships are not for people like me at my age coming in. I really was quite, I just was not expecting at all to qualify for any scholarship. And so when Ryan, you had told me that there was a scholarship that that I qualified for, and then in the end I received. I was beyond humbled. I mean, I think you saw my email. I remember it, that it was just a godsend. I mean, it was really. So all these barriers started to come down one by one, and I realized that, wow, this is possible. And then the time barrier was, well, that's possible with the asynchronous. And just as a last point, I was having a conversation yesterday, actually, with a very dear friend of mine here in Paris, who was also thinking about going back to school. She's 40 years old, and she thought, it's impossible. I won't be able to do it, and all this. And I said, wait a minute, I used to think that, but actually it's possible. It's possible. So I want to just, to kind of underline the fact that it is possible to overcome a lot of these barriers that we have as adult learners.
And I have to share that, through the generosity of some very incredible donors that make things like that possible. I think many of us enjoy the work we do, right? Working on a college campus is one of the best things, but the gift that the donors give to students to be able to change their lives. And you used the word humble. And I'll tell you, when I turned in your letter of thanks to the donor, they came back with that same word. Oh. And said that was very humbling for them, that they felt so humble that they've moved you. And it's just me be able to watch both of it. It's a great experience.
Wow.
We've got some other things to get to, about 5 minutes left in our show. Tim, I do want to give you a chance to talk about barriers that you experienced when you were coming back to college.
Yeah, well, I was a little intimidated coming into the college environment, being out of school so long, and due to my age. So I was skeptical of if I could keep up, or I certainly didn't want to embarrass myself. But what I actually found was that my life and business experiences really helped me so much more than if I'd have been 18 to 20 years old. So I have a higher maturity level that really helped me excel. And looking back from when I was that younger age, I see that that barrier was only in my mind. And I think a lot of people create these barriers, and they're not really there once they get into it. And I must say, Dr. Backus, Ryan, Dr. Wah, several people at VSU, y'all have taken the barriers and the discomfort down and made it so easy. And y'all talked about that a little bit earlier, but the process to apply and to register is streamlined. The credits, everything was just has been an enjoyable experience for me, and it's lessened my intimidation factor of going back to college. And the people other people here in the company that are doing the same thing I am. It's been a great experience for us.
Oh, Tim, and I think that, that's just the last thing I want to say too. Again, I'm always on the pedagogical side. So then once y'all get into the classroom, what's really great about you and Trish, and I'm just going to hone in on this, you guys bring diversity to our campus, right? Diversity comes in all different shapes and forms. From economic diversity to regional diversity to racial diversity. Y'all bring a number of those things, but also you bring kind of age and career diversity to it. So that's a wonderful kind of pedagogical opportunity for our faculty and for our peers. I just wanted to emphasize that here at the very end.
I agree. And Dr. Bailey, I think this brings up, another non-traditional student who I've interviewed on this kind of format is Jesse Kalinowski. And, especially as Trish was talking about the confidence, Tim just mentioned it as well. Short story on Jesse Kalinowski. She actually was in school about the same time that I was. Life got in the way. She wasn't able to finish. Our children in the same class. And she found out what I did and said, Ryan, I've been thinking about coming back. And I told Jesse, Jesse, the hardest step is the first one to, really, register for that first class, walk into the building, and let's just say she has excelled. So anything you want to add to that, please feel free to.
Absolutely. Jesse actually ended up winning our most outstanding student in our department award, which is amazing to me. That's like Ryan's talking. Jesse and I have kids that are the same age. And to think about her managing that as I hear Trish and Tim speak, I just have to say that some of our most outstanding students are our older students. In fact, we just hired a former student as a faculty member in our department this year. I taught Dr. Lee, and he and I are the same age, and I taught Dr. Lee in scope and methods when he was an undergraduate student. He came in and did so well as an undergraduate student that he ended up going on to get a doctorate after he finished, and this is after a career in the Navy, right? And it was just incredibly impressive. And so when I hear Trish say that she's planning on stopping at a master's, I'm ready to pull my hair out, because I'm like, have the confidence. You've got the mind for a doctorate. Go on and do it, right? I want more non-traditional students. I want more older students. They've been some of the best students that I've had in the classroom.
When this online college keeps going, my phone has rang about 7 times during this conference right now. So game on, Dr. Bailey. Game on, Dr. Bailey. Charles, one question from the audience has come up as how do you apply for the NECA Earn program, or anything else you want to wrap up on that before we close?
All right. NECA Earn program is for people who are NECA stakeholders. In other words, they work in some way for a NECA contractor. So I would like to encourage any of you out there who, you know what your background is, you know what your skills are. You may want to seek out a NECA contractor for employment. There's a lot of work out there right now, whether it's in the technical side or in the office side. And Ryan's going to give you his email address. He can put you in touch with me. And who knows, maybe we can find a new career. Ryan, if I got just a few seconds, I do want to say this about barriers, and that's that everybody's barriers will be a little bit different. The barriers that Trish faced were different than the ones that Tim faced. What Trish's friend did, though, was the best way to start dealing with them. Ask for help. And I don't quote people very often, but when I do, it's usually Jimmy Buffett. And Jimmy Buffett has a song that one of the lyrics is, and the walls that won't come down, we can decorate or climb or find some way to get around, because I'm on your side. And we're all on your side. Valdosta State University is on your side. NECA Earn is on your side. So somebody can help you at least go around those walls.
Yeah. I don't think I can't say anything more, Jamie, after.
Yeah. I'm just going to say thank you to our panelists. Wow. This was, we kind of started it with the personal touch, and we ended with that lovely quote that I think sums up VSU's touch, even with our online adult learners education. So I'll turn it over to Ryan for next steps.
Yep. So thanks again for everybody to being part of this. I do want to just encourage anyone who's thinking about returning to school. And again, it's the hard first step. I get it. This is what we do. We're part of it. We've got many shining examples. Two of our most successful adult learners are with us right now. You can do it, and I think that's one thing too, is we watch things like this and it's like, oh, well, Trisha's, 20 years as an L writer, she's, got more experience than me. Your experiences matter. You will be fine. Get in touch with us. So if anyone is interested in learning more about, especially the e-college or the online college program, my email address is up on the screen too. Again, if you have questions for our panelists, especially about Nika Earn, or even just want to talk to Trish about her journey. I mean, Trish has always been so helpful and wanted to talk about this. Tim would do the same thing too. Get in touch with me. I'll put you in touch with them. And then look back. This is probably going to be our last Blazer Nation Live. We're trying to wrap up the semester. It's been a long semester for Jamie and myself both. But we look forward to doing more of these in the future. Again, thank you all for being with us, and be in touch if you have any questions.